Welcome back to the Game Collection. I am SuperDerek, and this is Rogue Galaxy. Rogue Galaxy is an action RPG by Level 5. It was released on the PlayStation 2 in Japan in late 2005. During localization, several improvements were made, including smoother graphics, new costumes, tons of new dialogue, and newly added abilities for all characters. This version was released in the West in early 2007, then re-released in Japan as the director's cut a couple of months later. Akihiro Hino reprises his role as director, producer, designer, and writer for the title, just as he did in Dark Cloud 1 and 2, and it shows. Rogue Galaxy feels very much like Dark Cloud 2, but has elements of other great games mixed in. In Rogue Galaxy, you play as Jaster, a young man who has dreams of traveling the stars. Through some mix-up, he's given an opportunity to do just that when he befriends some space pirates who mistake him for a legendary hunter. Together they scour the galaxy for clues to find the legendary treasures of Eden while evading the war-profiteering Datron Corp, who's in search of Eden's darker secrets. If you're looking for a story that's internally consistent and will challenge you to become a better person, well, you may want to look elsewhere. If Rogue Galaxy were a book, you'd probably find it in the young adults section, if you know what I mean. The writing and pacing feel pretty amateurish. For instance, the game sometimes uses the death of minor characters to try to evoke sadness from the player, but sometimes these characters are introduced to the player as recently as a few minutes ago. Not nearly enough time to develop an opinion of the character, let alone an emotional bond. Other times, characters are known for longer periods of time, but are underdeveloped, so none of the scenes really make a real emotional impact on the player. The overall pacing of the game is also confusing. The adventure feels episodic and meandering. It became difficult to determine exactly how far into the game I was, as it didn't seem to follow the typical 3-act structure. It built up some antagonists so much only for them to come to anticlimactic ends and suddenly introduce new supremely evil forces only to be able to easily put an end to those too. To top things off, the final showdown takes the form of an 11-part boss battle, a dissatisfying ending, and an epilogue that tricked me into thinking that there would be a post-game adventure, which instead led to a screen that just tells you what happened next. I mean, it's just so weird. Why would they choose to end the game that way? I honestly would have just preferred a simple to be continued screen. Yeah, I said a to be continued screen. I wanted more. Oh, you thought I didn't like the game? Oh, sure, the game's pacing is terrible and the writing is horrible, but that doesn't mean that the game wasn't a heck of a lot of fun to play. The game is no Grandia, but it still had a great sense of adventure to it. Swashbuckling your way through beasts and ancient jungle ruins in a foreign planet speaks to the child in me who doesn't care about all that other stuff. And flying through space in a legitimate wooden pirate ship is just cool. Walking around on the deck in the vacuum of space makes the adult me laugh at the thought, but the kid in me thinks that would be so freaking awesome. But you know what, adult me? Magic. Magic exists in every RPG ever, so just get back to suspending your disbelief and enjoy the ride. Rogue Galaxy plays like a mix between Kingdom Hearts and Dark Cloud 2. Your team consists of 9 members, which you can swap in and out of your 3-person party on the fly. Each party member has a main weapon and a sub-weapon, typically one ranged and one melee weapon, with some exceptions. You can control anyone in your party while the other 2 are controlled by the game's AI based on your strategy commands. Rogue Galaxy takes an interesting approach to battles in that the game is an action RPG which features random battle encounters. During an encounter, enemies pop up on the normal field where you're walking around and then the battle commences. After defeating the enemies, your experience points and spoils are tallied up and you can resume your exploration. It's an odd choice, but one that I think makes sense for this game, and it works pretty well. I can't really talk about battles without mentioning that they do get stale after a while, stemming from being poorly balanced. Enemies and party members all attack for massive damage, so encounters often feel like skirmishes between glass cannons. Because of this, your strategy will likely be to kill all enemies as quickly as possible using AoE spells at the start of battle. Enemy encounter rates are higher than they need to be, so you'll often find yourself with more money than you know what to do with, so you'll likely be maxing out all your inventory with restoration items, which will in turn make you feel nearly invulnerable, which in turn makes battles even more of a nuisance than a challenge for the most part. Except for some specific types of enemies, which are essentially immune to magic, who are then just annoying because they still deal a massive amount of damage but take forever to kill instead. An improvement over Dark Cloud titles is that dungeons are no longer repetitive, randomly generated floors of monsters to fight through. All dungeons are now handcrafted, though sprawling. It would have been nice to have a sprint button available because traversing these large areas at Jaster's leisurely jaunt takes several minutes, even without enemy encounters to slow you down. However, scattered throughout the dungeons there are save points which serve the function of healing as well as providing transportation to other save points you've already discovered on the planet. I also enjoyed the inclusion of dual and triple text that can be performed by groups of allies. There's even a function that acts as a sort of limit break that you can use against most enemies, which requires you to input button presses at just the right times in order to complete them, which isn't overly difficult but also doesn't feel particularly powerful compared to triple texts, which don't even have the possibility of failing. Rogue Galaxy borrows the addicting weapon fusion mechanic from Dark Cloud 1 and 2 and introduces a skill unlocking system similar to the sphere grid system from Final Fantasy X. The grid is called Revelation, which uses items dropped randomly from certain enemies or purchased from stores. There are unique monsters which you can hunt for bounties in exchange for hunter points and unique items. Those hunter points can be exchanged for more unique items as you ascend the hunter ranks. There are also hunter challenges you can take on to defeat a certain number of specific beasts in an area for more points. There's even an Insector competition minigame that you can still sink your time into. For completionists, Rogue Galaxy can offer 80 hours of gameplay and extras, but I was able to finish the game at a leisurely pace in just over 50. For a late PlayStation 2 title, Rogue Galaxy is every bit as beautiful as one might hope. The cel-shaded graphics have aged very well, and you only see particularly low-resolution textures once in a while. Otherwise, the game runs at a smooth frame rate and features minimal load times. It's a real testament to the power that the PlayStation 2 was capable of. In fact, if it weren't for the lack of widescreen support, one could be forgiven for mistaking this for a Nintendo Wii title. Composer Tomohito Nishiura of Professor Layton fame had worked with Level 5 on the soundtrack for Dark Cloud 1 and 2, and returned for Rogue Galaxy. The music, as a result, feels very similar to Dark Cloud 2, adding to that feeling of similarity that I alluded to earlier. There have been no re-releases of Rogue Galaxy digitally or otherwise, so getting a physical copy is currently the only method of playing it, but complete copies of Rogue Galaxy can easily be obtained for less than $30, which really isn't bad for a game of this caliber. Rogue Galaxy is a fun and exciting game that'll keep you entertained for hours upon hours. As a follow-up to Dark Cloud 2, the game does fall a little bit short, but until we get news of a Dark Cloud 3, it's not a bad way to let Level 5 scratch that itch. The game borrows freely from other excellent titles and experiments with new mechanics that help keep the game feeling fresh. It's also one of the best looking games on the PlayStation 2. Sure, the plot of the game and the characters won't really hold your interest, but if you're okay with a little bit of mindless fun, then I can't recommend this game enough. And that's why it's got a spot in the game collection. Ever want to know why I feel the way I do? Check out my playthrough by following the annotation in the lower right. If you'd like to support the show, consider becoming a patron for access to cut and behind-the-scenes content, status updates, and video commentaries just like these awesome people.